Hello, everyone. This is
Hi.
Chaos Augur with Vicar Amelia Duo Die, and we finally finished Silent Hill 2 Remake. We'll give you our thoughts on it. It's something that deserves the discussion, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It was interesting. It was a journey.
It, oh boy, was it a journey. Uh, Lots of fun to be had along the way. Just tap
Oh,
dancing our way on through Silent
I
Hill.
was just imagining like Wizard of Oz, like just that, but James.
No, it's the Wizard of Oz is always the dog.
But James has the shoes on too.
He sure does. He's got those great combat boots for those sick combat rolls that he was doing through the game and his shooty bang bangs. Uh, um, but I mean, before we get started on the remake, we need to talk about the original. And it needs to be said once again, like we stated in our last podcast, we did not finish the original game. We made it to past the hospital, from
Yeah.
my recollection, and it just never held our interest.
Yeah, and it didn't click.
Just never clicked. What that game does great is uh, it's a great story, but we didn't finish the story, so we wouldn't have known that. It has great environmental storytelling, but you wouldn't know that until you finish the game.
It's
And
a slog to get to what is the ending, which is the whole point, but they don't like entice you to get to the ending.
the game's pretty.
Well, for its time, it was, I guess.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, it was really pretty for its
for a
time.
PlayStation 2 game, man, like,
Mm-hmm.
because we started with Silent Hill 3, which that game is leagues better looking than Silent Hill 2.
It's still pretty good looking.
But what we always had a trouble with was we just didn't resonate with those characters. Uh, the voice acting in particular, I know we kind of were making fun of back then.
I mean, yeah, but everybody made fun of Resident Evil 1's voice acting, and it became like part of its charm.
Mm,
And I feel like the voice acting became like similar part of Silent Hill 2's charm originally.
I agree. The voice acting in that game is from abhorrent
Too
to
okay.
to pretty pretty damn good. The letter read is
Yeah.
really good. There's a couple scenes with James and Angela that are well done. I think the first interaction with him and Eddie is actually pretty decent. But
Laura sounds good in both games.
yeah,
Uh,
Laura's probably the standout in the original, I would
Yeah,
think.
I think she sounds great. It just sounds like a kid. Um I mean, now that I've heard the new voice acting, it's hard for me to like the old voice acting as much.
And I want to stress that I have watched 5 hours of the remake cutscenes
I
and
could never.
3 hours of the original cutscenes back to back to back, once all the way through by themselves and of their own merit, and then also scene by scene next to each other. So that's how prepared I've made myself for this. And my eyes are tired from watching Silent Hill 2.
Yeah, I could
Uh,
never. I mean, I'm not going to remember even if I did all that, is what I said.
yeah,
Like, I
well,
remember vibes. I don't really.
you're the emotional one. I'm the analytical one. Is what it comes down to, and we just really want to set like a base for when we're talking about this, that we kind of know what we're talking about, because Silent Hill is an old school survival horror game and we grew up on old school survival horror games. So it's not like we hate the original game or anything. It just it didn't resonate with us or grab us.
Yeah, I think it number one thing it suffers from is that pacing. You know, we
It's
just
very slow.
couldn't make it through.
It is one of the
We
slowest
would
games.
enjoy moments, and then there would just be too much time in between where we were like, ugh, is it worth it?
Yeah, and especially back then, reusing assets, everything looked very samey. So if it doesn't engage you with the combat, engage you with the uh, characters and the enemies and the environments, then it's gonna lose you, and if it loses you, then you miss out on a great story.
Yeah. And that's the unfortunate part. You know, for us, we missed out on finishing that ourselves in the moment, but I mean, we came back to it eventually, and that's how we ended up here because we did like Silent Hill 2 once we made it through the story. We were in love with it. It's obviously a great story, and so we were hoping the remake would sort of ignite that fire that we wanted from the original.
Mm-hmm. And I would say that it does in leagues. Um, but let's start with some of the basics. Let's talk about the combat for this game versus the old game. And
So I physically played the old game. I didn't physically play this one.
mm-hmm.
The old game was annoying, but it was super easy. I mean, I ran through those apartments myself. I barely had any combat in it. When I played, I was just like, get out of my way. I'm bored. Move, please. Like, I was so over it.
Yeah, the enemies are more annoyances than they are.
Yeah, they don't feel like a threat.
Yeah, and that takes away from the fear
Mm-hmm.
factor of the game in itself. And that's one of those things too. Is Silent Hill 2, the original, I never thought was very scary. It was just kind of weird,
It
kind of
was like, ooh, cool imagery, neat.
off-putting, awkward, um, provocative.
Yeah.
But Silent Hill 3 was so intense with its
Mm-hmm.
sound design that it I remember when we were playing it that like I had to physically stop myself from continuing because I was like I can't do any more of this industrial noise.
Mm-hmm.
But combat's important, and it's important because when you look at a survival horror game, and I'm going to compare it to Resident Evil, especially with these old school horror games, it's very you want to get an enemy out of your way so you don't have to deal with it later. And Resident Evil does a great job at you're managing your resources, your ammo, etc. If you get down to the knife, you got problems.
But you can do
You can do it.
it.
You can do it, but you have problems.
Yeah.
Silent Hill's not like that. Silent Hill
No.
is you will always have a stick or something that can do enough damage where you don't have to worry. Like Silent Hill 3 play through mostly with the katana.
Oh
Silent
yeah.
Hill 2 you have your stick and pipe, and you know ammo's just there for kind of I don't even know why really because some enemies are dangerous I guess, but I never really saw it.
Bosses and stuff. I'm sure it's helpful, but basically, I think yeah, you're right. The original combat doesn't feel like there's much to it. You were talking about how important combat is and comparing it to Resident Evil. I would say it's not supposed to be like Resident Evil. It's supposed to be about you're hearing stuff around you all the time. You're worried about not knowing where it's coming from. It's about that scare factor. It's about just not wanting there to be something around because it's creepy and fast. And
Yeah,
that's why the remake does it perfectly.
because it's disturbing and engaging.
Yes, because how the enemies act, how the AI is programmed makes it worth not having an action combat because the bugs are strategically placed so that the radio is going off and you don't know what's around each corner.
A lot of good little scares, just
Mm-hmm.
bugs being on walls and
Oh
not
yeah,
moving.
and you not knowing what's around you. The mannequins, the double-legged enemies, they hide. They don't go straight for combat. They go for hiding and getting you when you walk by.
And small detail with the mannequins too,
Mm-hmm.
when they're hiding, your radio doesn't go off.
Oh really?
Yeah, it's a small touch, but it's there. So like they can be right next to you, and you
Mm-hmm.
won't know until they start moving.
Yeah. So I mean, it's setting it up for you not knowing what's around you and you being worried about what's around you. Where Resident Evil, like you said, it's about clearing the room, it's about getting through, it's about knowing your path and conserving your resources. Silent Hill is about clearing out everything so it doesn't jump out at you at random because it's going to scare you.
Yeah, it reduces the amount of stress you're going to hear with that radio static. That's what it's more about than anything, and it makes it a little less survivally in that respect and more of an experience than anything. Um, but uh, so the combat has a dodge mechanic, and the dodge is very well implemented. It feels like you're just kind of drastically moving out of the way. It's got enough invincibility frames to it that you can kind of dodge whatever direction you need to and feel safe, and then it's whack a mole time.
Yeah, but it didn't look easy. It didn't look like, oh, these enemies have a certain timing that's super easy to get down. And, there was enough going on that it felt like when you were in it, it had just enough of a swerve here and there to get you.
Oh yeah, that's because the enemies, they're not like, they're humanoid, but they're not, and they have weird isms about them, whether they're spitting or swinging wildly or trying to grapple you like the mannequins would. And trying to get those movement downs, I don't think, until I was in the jail where I was pretty much actively trying to save ammo and fighting nonstop, did I kind of get all the enemies down, except for the nightmare nurses. Those are terrible still. But uh, yeah, uh, they do some cool things with having almost like almost like a fighting game armor at times, where you're swinging at them and then they burst through your attack.
Oh yeah, because they can block and dodge themselves too,
or just muscle through you, and it creates pretty interesting kind of thing. I would love them to not do anything else with this combat. I feel like it's pretty perfect.
Yeah, because we've talked about this. Silent Hill doesn't need like super action or super perfect combat. It just has to be engaging enough to get you through the story.
Just make it engaging enough, and you feel wild when you're attacking these things. You feel brutish, and then even the gunplay. Like, it takes a second for James to really narrow that ridicule in. And fun fact, he doesn't have very good trigger discipline. His finger is on that trigger the entire time.
I mean, he doesn't act like he just wields a gun all the time. I think that's what people's worries were. Um, just by how James moves and acts and sounds, he doesn't seem like he's necessarily comfortable doing what he's doing. He feels emotional when he's doing it. I mean, there's just so many things to talk about in the combat alone.
Just with his kind of cries and grunts and everything when he's attacking, it feels panicked and really intense, and it's very gripping. It's probably one of my favorite things about the combat is just those little noises that he's making while it's all happening.
Well, it engages you because, like, you feel like there's emotion even in that. You feel like it, there's depth to it. You're not sure if he's enjoying it for the moment. He's scared. He's sad. Like, he's got all these different emotions going on, as he should, based off of what these enemies represent.
And it's good that they finally brought the Silent Hill stomp to that aggressive place that Dead Space has been. But, like, Silent Hill started the stomp, so
Dead Space did it better, but maybe we've perfected it.
Resident Evil started the stomp, but I mean, Silent Hill made the stomp like a thing. It's more of a little
Dead
kick.
Space
More of a
made
kick.
it better,
right?
Like Dead Space.
Isn't that what they used to do? It was like a little
it was
kick.
A kick.
Yeah. And then if you're Chris or Jill, one was a stomp and one was she'd boot the head off completely. Like, it's pretty cool stuff.
I still like the Dead
I love
Space
those little details.
stomp the best.
Well, that's because it's got that heavy, chunky boot.
Well, yeah, but that's how this feels now. So,
I know.
Like I said, we've come full
aggressive.
circle.
It's really good.
There's a lot of I think the spider-like enemy, the new one that's new, right?
Yeah, the spider mannequin.
One of my favorite enemies.
Oh my God,
super fun.
So cool.
Super freaky. Tons of scares, just like the bugs. Because these enemies can climb the walls and be anywhere. It's not as easy as walk forward, look left and right. It's anywhere now.
Anywhere. Uh, which brings me to one of the complaints that people had about this game was it was too long and there's not enough enemies.
Well, I think we've kind of established this already, but isn't there more enemies than the original in this?
Yes, which is
Because the zipper enemies and the nurses both have variants.
mm-hmm. And so do the mannequins now.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, the spider mannequin and the regular mannequin.
Oh, I didn't even think of those together.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, technically 6 enemies there because they act differently.
Mm-hmm.
And then the bugs also.
The bugs, the mandarins are more
yeah,
involved.
kind of.
Much more involved this
They're
time.
more like they're like foibles. They're like in your way.
Oh yeah, they're terrible to deal with. Especially in this game, we were very frustrated with those enemies.
Yes, but then you have bosses too. So I feel like it was fine.
Mm-hmm. Length? Do you think the length was too long?
I don't think so. I mean, it didn't feel too long. At some point, I was kind of like, "Where are we? Let's go." Yeah. But I feel like we were also trying to find all the stuff, and we were interested. Like, it doesn't have to be that long of a game if you're not interested in stuff.
That's exactly what I think, and you got to think that an 8 to 10 hour game that got extended to, I want to say 15 to 17 hours. So let's say an extra 5 hours of content. It's all really good content. There's not much waste here, and where they could have shortened the game up, you probably would have lost an hour. I would say you could probably cut an hour from the game, and it would have been just as impactful.
There were spaces that I know were in the original, and they were trying to keep that, but like the that garden by the historical society in the beginning area, like there's nothing there. There's nothing to do. They didn't add anything to it. It's just you walk through it. There's a couple little things that you read, and that's it.
I think that's to get some lore and stuff. I haven't dived enough into it yet. I'm still like, this game is a dive. It's a rabbit hole once you start going down the rabbit hole. But it's, I think the relevance to it is that James and Mary hung out at this park by the lake or whatever.
Well, I get the relevance, but you could have made it smaller or gave it to me all in one pile or spread it around even more. If you were going to have it there, just
make it more of a quick story beat.
Yeah, because that's all it was, but you made me walk through this entire part, and it's like there's nothing even new or interesting to look at. There's a couple little details around it.
Yeah, it's a square hedge kind of area.
Yeah, it's like you could have made some of that. I think what is it? I want to say vineyard, but I don't think it is at the end.
Oh, the hotel?
The hotel. I mean, that gets a little slow for me.
Really?
But maybe it's because I'm like, okay, the ending's here. It could be the end. Ending, yeah. Like, hurry up. What's the end? Like, I want to see how the end is. Like, let's get to the good stuff. I think that was going through my head a lot, probably.
Right. So you would say though that there was enough variation with the enemies that it kept you pretty well satisfied.
I mean, even if they weren't overly variated, it's how they used them. It's that they felt a little bit different in each environment, and each environment felt like you had to get to know it. It was like, it almost reminded me of levels. Does that make sense? Like when you're going through levels in older games and you're like, oh cool, like we're at the hospital level now, or with the nightmare hospital level, and it's like now you gotta adjust.
I'm gonna say this game could have been only the mannequins, and I would have had a blast because the mannequins were so fun and comic. Like, it almost comically got me at some point.
Oh yeah,
because it was happening so frequent where they were like, I think I walked into a room, I turned and saw one, and you're like, it's right there, and I was like, looked away, I'm like, what are you talking about? And it was already on me.
Oh
like,
yeah,
it was.
And they have cool moves and stuff too. Like, I like how the enemies are just more mobile, and
I think the engagement with the mannequins alone was enough. The nurses are actually legitimately fun combat.
But each enemy has a different, like, I don't know how to explain this. Like, the zipper enemies, you have to dodge, their spit, and then you have to dodge the
The
stuff on the
line
ground.
figure. The line
Yes.
figure.
Okay, I'm gonna call them what I'm gonna call them. And
Zipper
then
face.
the
Yeah.
nurses hit hard and take a lot of damage,
Mm-hmm.
and the mannequins are fast and stealthy and play with you, and so like all of those involve a whole new like brain process that goes into fighting them.
Mm-hmm. I agree. It. I think they did a really good job with these enemies. That less was more, and
Mm-hmm.
they made them engaging from beginning to end. I didn't get tired of any of them ever, except when I saw a Nightmare Nurse. I was like, I'm shooting this thing in the face. But
Mm-hmm.
other than that, I
It wasn't like
felt
an annoyance, like, oh no, I don't want to see this enemy
the
again.
Mandarin was about the only annoyance I had for the
Oh yeah.
game, and few and far between. But where they were
Well,
at,
we'll agree to disagree.
it could be aggravating.
That is my least favorite part, and the mandarins I think were just, I don't know. I hated it. I think it was bad game design. I think it was bad level design. It was bad everything. I hated that. So I'm gonna feel a little bit more viscerally.
That's fine. Uh, how about the puzzles? How do you
Oh,
like the
the puzzles
puzzles?
shine in this to me.
Yeah,
Um,
the coin one especially for me that felt
well,
really.
so now I'm debating it while I'm saying it. I'm like, okay, they all felt a little easy. Maybe it was a little like too much. Like you didn't have to think too hard.
You're right. We should have played it on hard puzzle mode.
Yeah, I'm interested in that because like I do feel like a child would have trouble.
Yeah, a younger person would have trouble with these puzzles. Although I don't feel like a younger person should be playing this game actually, but
Right. But that's kind of what it feels like to me. The puzzles are made for
which is
like
funny because we were playing this kind of shit when we
I
were
know you're right.
younger. But
But yeah, it feels like we play D&D, and when I'm a
mm-hmm.
DM, I'm looking for puzzles for toddlers basically
Right,
because um
you don't want to halt all progression.
correct. And it almost feels like they were like, "Okay, well, how about we move into teenage or YA territory with our puzzle writing?" Because it just feels like it's so easy to figure out where they're going with everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I was caught off guard with quite a few puzzles,
Mm-hmm.
like the wrist bracelets and stuff like that, where I
Yes,
couldn't even figure that out.
and you had to line up the scratches. It wasn't the
Yes,
numbers.
yes.
Actually, it was the scratches. I had so much fun with all these puzzles. The just the jukebox puzzle
Mm.
from the beginning. Just interacting with the whole jukebox, you have to move all these
Mm-hmm.
gears around to make it work.
Well, how many pieces you had to find and then put together and then put in?
I would have loved more stuff like that. Even in, like the more in-depth, complicated puzzles, like knowing the poetry and how to fit that in with the noose puzzle in the
So
jail.
I think that's part of the reason the jail is one of my favorite parts because I feel like the weight puzzle and that those poems they were the most
In
interesting
depth.
where it wasn't obvious what the answer was because I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that's the problem is
Mm-hmm.
that okay, the jukebox puzzle was fun and it is supposed to be a tutorial, but it's really obvious. It's like you got these two pieces, you got glue, you put it in the jukebox. Like,
Yeah, but part of the puzzle and the fun of it was maneuvering the pieces because if you
mm-hmm,
start pressing things, the jukebox just doesn't work. You have to figure out how to make the jukebox work. So it's almost like you're
mm-hmm,
fixing the jukebox plus the record, and then you got to hit all the stuff to make it
right.
play.
Well, and that one's more in depth, especially for tutorial. But there are a couple where I'm like, oh, obviously, oh,
Mm.
this is what we're gonna look for. Oh, that's what we're gonna look for. But even though it was an old one, I didn't think about hooking the drain. Like when we first found that
Mm-hmm.
needle, I had no idea what it was for.
Oh, I knew exactly what that was for. I remember that one specifically from the old game. But the one of the cool ones for me, because we were kind of like, this is dumb at
Mm-hmm.
first, was the mirror puzzle. But then we're like, what's going on? Nothing happened. And then we ran into another room that was empty, and now that room was filled with stuff. And that was one of those things that's kind of like,
Right.
I was just like, wait a second, let me go over here real quick. And it's like, oh, it explodes, and you're just satisfaction guaranteed with the
Yeah, when you
puzzle
figure those
solutions.
out, it's super cool. What was not cool was when we got trapped in the room of bugs
Mm.
and we had to just figure out the code based off of what was on the keypad.
While
Like,
we're getting attacked. Yeah.
yeah, why you're getting attacked. And it's like, so you didn't even have a chance to look at it in detail because you're trying to figure out what's going on in the room and you're like, okay, I gotta find a code somewhere, and you're getting attacked and you're getting hurt. And then you're trying to put in the code or look and you're being attacked and you're being hurt.
That was easily the worst puzzle on top of the cube glitch, but less of a puzzle, more of a glitch.
Well, yeah, because that's the thing that's the kind of puzzle I'm talking about where it's far too obvious to me. Where we shouldn't have done so bad at it, minus the glitch, because it's too obvious. Like, okay, you find the next door, you go into the door, you finish the thing, you find the next door, you, like, ugh.
Yeah.
But I also hate that part.
Agree. It's not like following the chains in the hospital and then
yes, that was really fun.
To me, the hospital was the shining star of the entire game.
Where I think the prison was.
The prison was actually I loved the prison.
Prison was 10 out of 10 for me. Like, I have no complaints.
The hospital's a 10 out of 10, and the prison's a 10 out of 10.
Yeah,
like,
I'd say the hospital is too.
Really great areas. The apartments was a great setup.
The apartments was better than the original. I felt like there was more life. I think we kind of got off track from talking about what were we originally talking about?
The puzzles.
Oh, the puzzles.
Yeah.
So now we're talking about all the areas, but I did so puzzle wise in the apartment area. I do like that they mixed up the expectations because I'm like, okay, you get the pop, and you put it down the chute, and this is the clock one. Like, I've done those puzzles so many times because I can never get that far in the game.
That they did nightmare clock puzzle, and you had to kind of do it a different way. Overall, so we're gonna say the puzzles were pretty much a hit.
Oh, heck yeah.
Okay. So.
There was a couple things I think they flopped. Like, if I was gonna give it a score or something, I'd give them like a 9 out of 10 on the puzzles.
Yeah. I love the puzzles in this, so I'm pretty like smitten. So 10 out of 10 for me on puzzles.
Again, if I'm gonna
we're not scoring each individual.
No, we're not. I was just joking around.
We're talking shop right now.
Yeah. No, if I'm gonna pick my favorite puzzle though, I'm gonna say the prison's where it's at. I liked the wait puzzle, opening the doors. I felt like I was playing like a Zelda game or something. It was awesome. And then I liked the poems together. Like, I actually had fun doing those.
Yeah, because you actually solved that lightning fast.
It was awesome.
Like, faster than I could even process it. It was pretty funny.
Yeah, I was into it.
Yeah, the coin puzzle for me was great. Just the idea
of
placing the coins and then you had to move them along and whatnot. But
well, and it felt never ending.
Oh yeah.
And we were like, oh my goodness,
we solved it and then it flipped and now it's a new puzzle and now
like,
we're still manipulating the same coins. I wish games would do more stuff like that. I'm praising this game with its puzzles. Now, like, graphics and stability. What are we thinking? Graphics and stability, because I feel like this is the actual nitty gritty of if you're going to talk about
negatives. It's where the negatives are.
Yeah, that's where all the negatives are really going to come from.
We played on PS5, if you don't already know. So, I think PC was a little more stable from what I've seen. No. Okay.
Way less stable.
Well, graphic wise, like, we
Better.
had that weird freaking puddles, like all the water in the beginning looks freaking weird.
Yeah, it's something to do with the motion blur of the trees and the puddles. It's really weird, but it looks like it's raining or glitching.
Yeah.
Like, kind of funky.
It just doesn't mix.
It takes away, especially in a town that's
not
wet.
Supposed to be glittering.
Yeah.
Because it looks like it's glittering almost.
It's just wet everywhere, and it's pretty. It takes you out of it pretty harshly.
I know there's a mod specifically to get rid of the hair shine in this game.
Oh,
because it's so shiny.
Does it get rid of James, like, Play-Doh hair in the Angela scene?
I don't know, but it's so. Because it looks so yellow and shiny, like, and so people modded that just to get rid of all the shine. I wouldn't say. I think it's pretty. I think the characters look great. The scenes are beautiful. The locations are beautiful. I like what they did in the town, especially. I loved the different like diners you go
Yeah,
through.
the aesthetic is really pleasing.
Yeah.
I loved every character model. I know people aren't high on Angela's character
I think
model.
she looks
I
great.
think she looks amazing. So that's she looks like a person instead of
Yeah.
an emaciative like
A character model.
just like
Yeah.
those old models, man.
Well, they all look like PlayStation 2 character models because they didn't have as much they could do.
Well, I mean, they look. She looked, especially in this game. Like everybody looked really sick.
Mm-hmm.
This looks more natural, and I like the more natural look versus that really sickly look.
Mm-hmm.
But I, it's one of those like it's, you're putting you're exposing maybe too much too quickly with those old character models versus looking more like you're not dead.
Or like you're actually somewhere with other people there.
Like you have some more emotion going on.
Yeah. Um, because we saw stuff that, if you look at Eddie, he might have like cold breath all the time
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. That are small details instead of the obvious, like, oh, this is a spooky town
Mm-hmm.
and everybody's probably dead.
Or the one of my favorite scenes is when Eddie's throwing up, and the old one. If you watch the cutscene carefully, you'll see him look over his shoulder and kind of smirk a little bit before he starts denying about the body in the refrigerator. Um, and it's like, to me, it always kind of gave away like, oh, this is a bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in this one, Eddie's like in a panic.
He
Like
looks so pathetic in this
he
one.
looks very pathetic and very like I felt bad for him up until the end
Mm-hmm.
of his character arc. But yeah, the graphics and stability are probably the weakest parts of the game. Not aesthetically. Aesthetically, everything's pretty pleasing, but
There's a lot of glitching. There's a lot of problems.
stuttering.
Yeah.
The camera does some wonky things here and there.
Oh my god.
Sometimes it's hard to grab items.
Every time you do one of those mini cutscenes, like when you take the curtain off the
oh
jukebox,
yes,
or like
yes.
when you're pulling out of the grate with that little pin, it has trails on it basically. Like it looks all soft and wavy and like it's going like whoosh.
Yeah.
And it's like, what the fuck is that? What just happened here?
Yeah.
Like, and it actually, like, normally I'm not a big complainer about glitches and stuttering and stuff with, like, it doesn't take me out. But those were so hard, they took me out.
Well, I mean, especially with survival horror, because
Mm-hmm.
it's such a experience and it's more of a cinematic experience than anything.
It is.
Uh, it those
Headphones on, lights off.
yeah, those things really do take you out of it. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna say this though, for a Silent Hill game in this day and age, this game was actually pretty damn scary.
Oh, it was terrifying. Like, we both legit jumped at multiple moments.
Yes. I can't express enough. Just the dark, and we had to turn up the um, gamma just so that anybody could see the game.
And it's still hard to see on our recording.
It's still really hard to see. Like, we were trying to give the best experience that we could give you and not ruin it for us. It was very dark. It was hard to see anything. And just the noises and everything.
The noises.
Just, you could almost hear Pyramid Head dragging that huge knife around.
Well, they make those sounds on purpose. Like, even when you're in town and stuff, like, you were on New Game Plus, and I heard scraping, and I'm like, this dude.
Yeah.
Like.
Just, you can hear it scraping in the distance. But even that, just when you get into an area and you start seeing little cut marks or you start seeing the dead bodies lying around and you're like, oh, what got to these guys,
That's some of my favorite stuff is like, there's something stronger than them here, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
It's good, like, storytelling by, like, subtle things. I think the sound design was great. It was super scary. I think we were anxious a lot of the time, like
Yeah.
not knowing if we were gonna get hurt or die. Like, and that's where the combat comes in with that too, because it felt like this is gonna suck to go through.
And it made for a lot of wobbly camera work because I was really checking around everywhere to make sure that everything was safe. It's
Mm-hmm.
one of those hard to watch kind of things because when you start moving the camera too much, it
Mm-hmm.
becomes just stressful for everybody in the room plus the viewer watching. It's I don't know how to explain, but just the entire time I was just on edge because I was just like, there could be a mannequin here. I'm not hearing anything. That doesn't mean that there's nothing here. And then you hear the crackling, and then you're like, oh, great. I got to figure out where this is coming from now.
Well, because something can be in front or behind you at any time. Like, you could think everything's fine, and stuff would just be crawling through windows, going through doors, like
Mm-hmm.
spawning from different areas, popping out of stuff. It was just, it made you on edge all the time.
Yeah.
Not to mention just how uncomfortable, especially the nightmare world is all the time.
Yeah. It's it's really something to be looked at, and hopefully in future. I know a lot of people don't want more remakes. I would love them to get us at least the classic four games because
Yes.
those they're a highlight in gaming history, and to not have access to those games without buying them for an expensive price or emulating them on emulators that are a little shaky to get them going is problematic. I know myself, I like a pure experience, and I have those games up there. It's just I have to get a lot of extra things to make them work now too,
Oh, yeah.
and
Because we don't even have
that becomes frustrating.
AV outlets on our.
You got to get converters and
Yeah.
everything, and it's cheap to get a converter, but I don't even know
It's a
if
pain in the ass.
don't even know if the PlayStation 2 still works. Do the
Right.
memory cards still work? Because technology does fail over time, and we've had that stuff forever.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have something that I can go through that story again, and it's not a tedious mess like those games were. And let's say what they were. They were great games for their time, for their storytelling, but they were tedious messes. Uh,
I would say also what makes this game scary is the overall level design because it's really confusing. It's maze like.
yes.
Everything is an incredible maze. If I wouldn't have been able to make it through that game myself because I would have got frustrated, I would have been freaking out, I wouldn't have known where I was going and had to go back and forth.
Yeah, you really gotta be self aware of where you're at, where you're going. And there was a part in the apartments where we actually missed uh, like a hole that we could crawl in, and we found it before we started another episode. But it was one of those
Oh, it took
situations.
forever
Yeah,
to find this
we had
one
a
little hole we didn't know was there.
and it was to get to the garbage chute, which was you know an important part of the completion of the game. So
Yeah, no, but the level design was so good, it added to its scare factor.
how about the voice acting? Because this is the other thing that a lot of people are looking at pretty negatively.
I have to start by saying sorry, Troy Baker.
Oh yeah,
Um,
you suck. By the way, Troy. Yeah,
the game you did not voice act
yeah.
in. That's my bad. I don't know where I got the idea. Maybe I'd seen like something that was fake at some
I'm
point.
pretty sure I was told by somebody it was Troy Baker doing it, and I just assumed.
I think he did it in the remaster, right?
Yeah, he did it in the HD.
And I think maybe that's where some of that got confused, where it's like he's doing it again and everybody hated it, and
Yeah.
like I think the wires just crossed in my brain. But besides that,
But it was Luke Roberts. Let's get the guy's name out there, and he did a wonderful
oh
job.
my god, yeah, he did great.
Yes.
Um,
Look that up. Make sure I got that name right because
Okay.
I want to make sure that the credits going to where the credit
yeah,
is due.
considering we said Troy Baker for a really long time.
I'm gonna say this about Guy Seehey and his performance of James in the classic game. It's very stilted. It's awkward. And it works sometimes, and other times it just doesn't. Like when he's doing
Luke Roberts.
Luke
Yeah.
Roberts.
You're right.
Okay. So when he's giving off the anime lines like "Let's finish this" at the end, it's
it feels anime, but it was a Japanese translation, so it probably
was,
is like very anime.
yes, but again, rewatching these performances for 3 hours straight,
was miserable, I'm sure.
it wasn't that it was miserable, but you do start seeing the glaring problems with the voice acting and some of the excuses that people are making about how, oh, it was purposely made. I'm going to tell you this: if somebody purposely wanted the game to be that, boy, was that a misstep. Because
hasn't the director come out and said
I'm
something about like we
sure,
just got who we could because we didn't have a budget for it?
Yeah, so
it wasn't like on purpose. Some grand scheme.
Now here's the thing: I haven't found like evidence of it, but he was picked because he sounded more depressed than the other actors who did it. So they wanted to have that more depressed sounding voice.
But to me, he doesn't really sound depressed. He sounds confused.
That's what the entire game sounds like. It just sounds like a bunch of confused people.
Mary.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's very one dimensional.
Yes.
And when you put this side by side with Luke Roberts' performance, not only does he sound confused, but he sounds depressed. And he can change emotion and
at a drop of a hat, which is what I'm gonna follow up with, because I am so excited about his performance that I was like dogging on to begin with, but that's my fault, because when he's dealing with Laura in particular, and one of my favorite scenes is when she's like, "Okay, promise you're not gonna get mad or yell at me," whatever she says, and he's like, "Yeah," and like, "Oh, look at me, I'm James, I'm the nicest guy," and then she says one thing wrong, and he's just like, "Yeah," just yelling at her immediately, and it just sounds the juxtaposition between nice guy James and real James.
Yes.
Like, because it makes you feel almost like it's an act, and that's why I'm calling it that.
Yeah.
Because when you see those real moments of James come out, you wonder what was he actually like with Mary.
Mm-hmm.
Like how much of this was Mary being difficult, and how much of it was James like this pent up like asshole that he is, kind of, because it comes out so quickly, and his voice actor portrays that so well.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And when you compare Angela to her old voice,
leagues better.
There are points where Angela sounds like she might be Australian in the classic, in the OG Silent Hill. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's when she's talking about James's wife, and he probably went and found somebody else, and it's pretty awkward. And there's moments where it is good, but for the most part, it's pretty bad. And the Angela in this, like, she sounds exhausted, depressed, and then when there's that gleam of like she's satisfied that she's kind of terrifying James at some point, she smirks and just kind of mocks him briefly.
When she just yells and lets out rage and like has all that emotion,
And
it's
starts,
so like,
oh man, you feel
it's
uncomfortable.
so visceral, like visceral. She's so good at it, and I like that she sounds a little awkward, but because she sounds a little human in it. She sounds like an awkward girl who didn't get the chance to grow up because it was stolen from her.
Yes, she sounds broken.
Yeah.
And like she doesn't have a grip on her emotions at all.
Right, because she's so easily back and forth, and like it sounds like she's talking like how she was told to, or how she's supposed to, or what she's stuck in, and then she's her real self for a 2nd. And it's really good. I was really happy with her version. I feel like I had something else to say, but I lost it. But that's okay.
That's fine.
Oh, I like that it feels like these characters don't give everything away.
Yes.
So that's what I was gonna get at is that instead of always pointing out, well, they still point out like I know Mary and I know something about Mary, and instead of it being like more confusing, they're like, "Hey, I know Mary," and he's like, "What?" And they're like, "What?
Yeah.
Like what? Like I don't know." It's like passing in conversation. It's not like, oh, by the way,
Yeah.
I know all these things. They move it into the conversation well.
Well, that's what I like about Maria's performance. Uh, because in the original, she sounds more antagonistic.
She sounds like a bitch.
Yes. And in this one, she's more flirtatious and
She
manipulative.
feels like the devil in this one. I'm
She
just gonna say it.
exactly, but
Like she's
just
so manipulative.
the subtle changes in Maria's writing and just how you're not playing your hand, like showing your hand too
Mm-hmm.
early, because like when you meet Maria in the original, you're like, okay, well, this is obviously bullshit. You
Mm-hmm.
know, this is wrong on so many levels. This is a bad guy in disguise. Where this is like, no, she's just kind of like, well, you loved your wife, didn't you? And she doesn't say like, no, you hated her like in the classic. She doubles down on, didn't you? Like,
That's such a powerful
it's
move.
very powerful.
Where it's just like, you did, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, am I mistaken? Like, did I say something wrong?
Yeah.
Like, you are a good guy, right, James?
Mm.
We both know it. Like, she feels like she's just like, and rub her hands together behind James's back.
But at the same time, trying to earn his like trust and
Mm-hmm.
love.
Well, and I actually got duped a little bit in the beginning because I was just like, so are they completely changing Maria's character? Like, is she not a bad guy in this? Like, I got confused at some point because she was so gentle with him and
Mm-hmm.
just so like, oh, well, I did want to rest, but you really wanted to go. But, I'm just having such a hard time.
Or even things like the scene at the bar where she's like, I just thought we'd stop and relax for a minute. With all the monsters out there, it's good to take some time to ourselves. Here, have a drink. And James just stares at the glass of alcohol and doesn't take a drink, but like
Mm-hmm.
he's really looking at it. And so it's like, oh, well, he obviously has a problem with alcohol.
Gives Shining vibes,
Mm-hmm.
like it's
Yes.
that
Yes.
conversation
Mm-hmm.
that's super intimate and like has so much more meaning to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just such a subtle conversation where she does feel like she's just trying to get to know him and trying to
Mm-hmm.
talk to him.
In a natural kind of way,
Mhm.
in a weird world.
Mhm.
Um,
Like she's the normal like, "Hey, it's okay. Like we'll get out of this."
Laura also great in this.
Yeah, I would say Laura's, it depends on what you're looking for.
What I do like about the original Laura is she sounds like a little girl.
She feels more bratty.
Where this one she sounds a little bit more mature. Um, and when I say that, I mean
Like she understands
I can
what's going
tell it's
on.
not a young kid doing it.
Well, but her character in general feels like she kind of is aware of things.
Mm-hmm.
Where the original Laura, you could tell knew more than everyone else.
But still very childish about everything.
Yeah, like she's just playing. She's not as scared as everyone else is.
But I can't watch that scene with her and James about losing the letter. It makes me really sad because you're just like, you just feel really bad that she had these hopes and dreams with Mary and wanting to
Mm-hmm.
have a life and that just not being able to exist.
It is. It's really sad, and I think there's merit to both versions of Laura, where the older Laura, in the original just feels more like the whimsy or like she's a foible. So she feels like really childlike, where in this one she feels like a catalyst.
Mm-hmm.
She feels like this is what's sort of connecting the answers.
Well, it does a good job of maybe linking her better to Mary
Yes.
because it's kind of Mary's innocence.
I feel like she's a bit of a guardian angel because it's like it doesn't feel like there's a reason she should be stuck in Silent Hill, right? Like she's
Right.
not a bad person.
No. And it
She
doesn't seem like she's seeing any monsters.
well, she says there's monsters, but she's never getting caught like everybody else. She's
Mm-hmm.
never running away from things. She's just coloring and running around.
Yeah.
But she, she acknowledges that it's dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
I like the scene where you go into the nightmare hospital and it's her and she's like, it's in there. And it's them walking up to the doors together. It just feels powerful with the music and everything together.
Mm-hmm.
How it's presented, like they're going into, for both of them, the nightmare because that was her nightmare too.
Right.
But I do feel like she is more of a catalyst. She feels more like a guardian angel in the way that, like, if you want James to feel better and have a better ending and stuff, you really feel like you're supposed to be following Laura.
Mm-hmm.
Following Laura into the truth, following
Right.
her into acceptance
Right.
and the love that was there.
Where Maria's kind of like the bad side of Mary.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then we have
Eddie.
Eddie, who for me he stole the game.
Oh,
I
he
don't-
was so well done. I still think he sounds like Matt McMuscles, but and that takes me out of it because I'm just like, that's Matt.
I adored every scene he was in, and it felt very powerful. It felt very creepy,
Mm-hmm.
and it felt very like I pitied him and I wanted to help him, but at the same time I knew like he was beyond that help. Especially where there's the scene where um he's shooting a dead body in front of James,
Mm-hmm.
and James is trying to get him to calm down, and he says, "Shut up." And he's taking control of the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one who's giving the orders. He's the one who's telling James the way it's going to be. And then James knocks him down, and then it's that beautifully framed scene where he's now beneath James again. Like
Yeah.
he rose up to James level and above
Mm-hmm.
just to get knocked back down, and now he's kind of pitifully going, we're the same, and he's kind of whining again.
Yeah,
And
he is. He sounds
up,
completely different.
exactly, that up and down that he's having. It's a roller coaster ride, and like I feel for Eddie because I'm just like, get it right, man. Could you just get it right? And he can't get it right.
See, I hate Eddie in a good way. Like
Oh yeah.
Like I have a lot of feelings because I just think he's a bad person. I
Mhm.
think he's a manipulator. I think he wants you to feel bad for him.
Of course he wants you to feel bad for him because he's doing the wrong thing.
Well, yeah, but he's just like, oh, but bad things have happened to me, and
Mhm.
like, you should feel bad because we're like the same, man, and like people were mean to me, but like he doesn't when he talks about what he did, he doesn't have remorse at all. It sounds like he reveled in letting that self free and that part of him
Mhm.
free. So I just know he's deep down there. There's no help. He is just a bad person.
He let that overtake him.
And his death scene is perfectly framed for that too. It's such
Yes.
a powerful scene that there's no
Life.
no nothing. He's just sitting there,
Just gone.
yeah, eyes gone, everything, and there's no like coup d'etat like it comes to a head in any way. He's just
No.
laying there like
Yeah.
a real dead body.
And they got rid of that corny line of "I killed a human being."
Oh yeah, because like he just looks down instead.
Yeah, and he just touches his hands, and he's just kind of disgusted with himself because he kind of beat that like Eddie's that representation of that bad side of James,
Mm-hmm.
and he got rid of that bad side of himself.
Yeah, I mean, all four people represent a whole different dynamic of James, I feel like. And that's Eddie's portion is probably part of the reason I don't like James either.
Mm-hmm.
He's so well voice acted and done, though. It's incredible because he goes from a whimpering little baby to, like, yeah, I did this. Yeah, I did that.
And so what?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
like he's so confident and he's so loud. He does such a good job. He does such a good job at looking and sounding pathetic too.
Yes.
Like there's such a dynamic in Eddie as he moves through the game where you find him in his most pathetic state to where you fight him in his least pathetic state. And it's like a journey of its own, and it's its own story that you're going through.
And he dies in a meat locker. Fitting.
Well, the always their cold breath, you know?
Mm-hmm. So, let's go ahead and we're gonna rewind it and let's go ahead and talk about the game as a whole now. Uh, the game opens up and it has the beginning of the letter read and the
Which will get me every single time.
yeah,
I don't like starting that game and hearing it.
it's powerful.
Makes me sad.
And one well, a couple little changes for the scene is uh, James is not just washing his face; he's looking at his hand and he's touching his hands and he's shaking a lot. And then when he walks out, they immediately go into promise instead of waiting to go into promise, which I felt was much more effective.
Also, one of the best songs ever. One of the best soundtrack. I said if we didn't put down soundtrack, we weren't going to talk about soundtrack. My goodness.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about the soundtrack. Do you want to talk about the
I
soundtrack
want to
now?
talk about the soundtrack.
Let's go right now.
Okay, easy, simple. Ikaria. Oh my god, I lost the name. I know this name every other day.
Mm-hmm.
The person who does the soundtrack is a genius. This is one of my all-time favorite soundtracks.
Oh, this
It's like that with every Silent Hill, but it's just beautiful. The sound design's perfect.
Yeah,
everything's a banger.
This is easily my favorite Silent Hill soundtrack.
Yeah, and it wasn't for me before. I think 4 was mine. I would love to.
4 is a good one.
I would love to see those remastered too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people are still available to do that.
Remake 4, please.
Yeah, next. But now it's just Promise does a little something when you hear it, and there's just the way the soundtrack, each piece of the track sort of goes into each other's songs. My favorite things that soundtracks do is kind of keep some of the same things in their songs, and that happens in this, and it's great.
Yeah, the Angela's theme when she's climbing the stairs. That tears me apart. That's like one of the most powerful scenes in the entire game to me, and mostly because the music is just perfect.
Yeah,
like it's as unsettling and creepy, and it feels very depressing and fitting for that scene. I don't know how to else describe other than just like it's hard for me to even watch that scene.
I mean, again, we don't have to say too much except for 10 out of 10 on the soundtrack.
Oh
Music's perfect.
So good.
One of my top 5 probably composers. Game series for music.
Yeah, I do love the fact that um, Silent Hill has obviously had a little influence on me just in the back of my mind because I use a lot of these reverse and spread kind of chord patterns that he uses.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things I didn't even realize I did until I sat down and was like, oh, I feel like learning Promise on guitar today, and I'm playing. I'm like, I do stuff like this already.
You're like, oh, this is easy because I already do this.
100%. That's literally what it was, and I was just kind of like, huh. It's
beautiful soundtrack, beautiful sound design, beautiful everything. There's no complaints.
Sauce.
Absolutely,
it's fantastic. So
okay, back
to the opening.
Yes, the opening. So Promise plays earlier than it usually would,
and I feel it's more impactful because you get a little bit more of just that kind of somber, sad music.
Damn thing, it's so sad,
so good
because it's like, you know, especially if you've seen and played the game before, you know that this is what it feels like at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just bringing the end to the beginning,
yes.
And it's like you're in a constant loop yourself.
Yes,
you know, you started at the end, and it's perfect that way.
And there's a couple fun details if you're paying attention, and one of the biggest details is you can just barely make out in the back seat a floral pattern of some kind of blanket covering something in James's back seat, and that would be the implied spoiler alert.
We should have said right away.
Yeah.
All of this is spoiler alert.
Of
My
course.
goodness.
I mean, if you're watching this, you better know it's a spoiler. Get out of here. There's gonna be so many like, really, they spoiled. Oh, I'm just like, stop it. You're dumb.
Go home.
Could you click on yourself being an idiot, please? But
Like, comment, and subscribe if
Like,
you're an
comment,
idiot.
subscribe if you're dumb. Welcome to our stupid fan base of nobodies. The back of the car has a body in it. It's obviously it's his dead wife, Mary. He just has her in the back seat.
Mm-hmm.
And another detail that I only noticed on the New Game Plus, and this is interesting too.
If it's not a New Game Plus spoiler, so
It
there
is
might.
not a New Game Plus spoiler. This
Okay.
is at the beginning of the game. I double checked, and it is Eddie's van is parked there at the top too.
No shit.
You
Ooh.
walk up to it. What are you dropping stuff on the table? Quit being weird.
I'm fidgeting.
Yeah,
I fidget
stop
a
it.
lot.
We're having good conversation here, and you're over there being a distraction for no reason.
ADHD.
Yeah, that's your excuse for everything. But yeah, it's got a big gulp in it and some fuzzy dice.
Wow.
Yeah, just he beat you to Silent Hill. He's already there hanging out. So
should we talk about theories, like fan theories that maybe some of us, me, agree with?
what's that?
That this is their second time. This is actually like a sequel to Silent Hill 2, and it's James' second time through.
Oh, I think it's not a second time through. I think it's his infinite time through. I don't think he leaves.
Well, yeah, but I think it's supposed to be picking up from the original, not necessarily um, recreating the original, but like it's supposed to show you the loop.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Oh, I'm agreeing with you. You're misunderstanding. I'm saying that, but it's not a second time. It's like his billionth time.
Oh, I know,
and
but I mean, like story wise, it's like the original game feels like it's fresh, like right, like
well, it's a fresh idea, of course.
Right, and they sort of made the second one
changes.
Since it's our second time through. It's also kind of James's second time through, like little details in there. Like he's familiar almost with it, and I thought that was a cool theory. So I can see those little details with Eddie, and maybe he got there before James, but maybe he's just.
Well, I can't remember the original scene very well, but there might be a van up there that's you don't remember. But
that's true.
Who knows? But we make our way down the path, and instead of having that great humming music that's in the original, kind of echoing, it actually is very quiet until we get to Angela.
Mm-hmm.
And we have our first interaction with her. She's very odd and off-putting, and another cool little detail is the fact that she's looking for her mama, but she thought she would have found her father and brother, but they're not here either. And they're in a graveyard.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that you overthink if you're not.
Yeah, if
she's looking for their gravestones, and it's like you don't put those things together.
Oh, I totally did.
Oh,
I was like, oh, that's why
I did not.
When we
I
were
was
talking
completely not even thinking about
earlier about, what she actually had done because they don't definitively say it.
Right.
I don't think. I was like, I think there were more people in the house that burnt. And that's why she's looking for her father and brother.
Right. And that's the realization I had off of replaying was, oh, she knows that her father and brother are dead, and now she's looking for her mom because she doesn't know if her mother is dead or not.
Right, which is, and I interpret in general is she meant to kill her father and brother, but maybe she burnt the whole house down.
I think she burnt the whole house down.
And her mother was in it also, and that wasn't her intent.
I think she wanted to kill her dad, and then she burnt the house down, and her brother perished in the fire, and she didn't know where her mother was, or maybe or her didn't know if her mother perished in the fire as well. But I think she burnt herself alive and everything too. Just based off of everything that goes. Some people probably think she used a knife on herself, and that's not the case. I think she used a knife on her father. There's something specific later we'll talk about when we get there. But just kind of a normal interaction, and James is just kind of passively like, yeah, I know, it's weird, whatever, it's dangerous, I don't care, I'm gonna keep going. We get out into the streets of Silent Hill, and this for the most part is pretty much the same. Uh,
I like these streets better because they give you more places to go in and more puzzles and interesting things and stuff
I
to read.
agree because exploring Silent Hill should be exploring Silent Hill.
It was kind of fun. Like that's my cozy game section. I'm
Yeah,
like, oh, we're going shopping and doing stuff,
we're
and
gonna go see the businesses at the local coffee shop and dog
yeah,
store.
like I
Um,
like that a lot. But at the same time,
it's very interesting. It just when you make a town feel more alive, especially in a horror setting,
mm-hmm.
it subverts your expectations a little bit.
Yeah, there's just they put a lot of detail in little things. Like there's so many windows you can break and so many things and so much hidden stuff. Like there's locks we didn't unlock and all kinds
Oh
of
yeah,
things.
we didn't get in that general store
Yeah.
to get all the extra ammo and healing items. That would have been a big help earlier on because man, we were struggling in the early game.
Yeah. So they just made it so it was interesting to look around. Like there wasn't so much more content if you didn't want there to be.
Right.
Because you could have just ran through the
Oh
town.
yeah, I mean, if realistically to get the records and the button and everything to fix the jukebox is probably like a 15 to 20 minute ordeal at most.
Yeah, if you're just running through because you don't really have to fight anything in
No,
the area
just
either.
go to the record store, go to the apartments, and then fix the jukebox, and then you're into the Blue Hill apartments or Blue Crest apartment, whatever it's called.
Yeah, and so I think the fact that if you are interested in like just trying to unlock these other things or find all the collectibles or read all the things, you have a lot of content available to you and it feels interesting and it's dynamic.
Lots of fun little details like seeing James's coat in a washing machine and
Mm-hmm. His
uh,
body on
yeah, seeing
the
his dead
street.
body in the streets, and it makes you go, like, is this already Eddie at work? Like, what's going on? You know,
Mm-hmm.
because you really don't know, because you know he's here, and you know that he's shooting a lot of James's body later, but as of right now, you don't know if it's because of the monsters or is this somebody else that was in Silent Hill. It's really odd and kind of disturbing. The fog looks great. You
It
can barely see in front of you. It's awesome.
it makes the game not want to run perfectly sometimes
No,
because
no.
there's so much to the fog, but it looks good and everything sort of builds its way up. You know, we start at that top of the area where the music is pretty promises playing and then it goes quiet and then you're looking at the woods and the forest and then it starts getting creepy into the graveyard and then it just starts going downhill.
Oh yeah, I do love the slow build up because
Uh-huh.
it does get that disturbing humming music in, but it's only after you meet Angela that it starts doing to let you know, oh no, it's gonna get creepy now. I like that choice in doing a slower build up, making it really ominous and quiet at first,
Mhm.
and then the atmosphere really comes and hits you as you
Yeah.
get closer to the town. Is there anything you didn't like about this part of the game? Or
Not that I can think of. Like nothing was like, "Oh, I wouldn't want to do that again."
I have only one complaint, and my one complaint is when the storm kind of builds up and it gets really windy and it's kind
It's
of
one of my
push
favorite parts.
and it's kind of pushing you. I'm not a big fan of those parts because I don't like being forced.
I think that's
And
part of it.
I know,
Like you're supposed to feel uncomfortable. You're supposed to be annoyed. Like it's supposed to work on your emotions as a player too.
yeah, and I hate it. So
Well, it did its job then.
stop it. Don't
Like I love that part.
don't do it again. And newsflash, it does it again later.
Okay, well, it's one of my favorite parts
That's
because I
fine.
also think it is super ominous when everything picks up. Like I start to feel uncomfortable because I'm like, oh shit, what's this? Like I
Hmm.
haven't seen this before. Like
Yeah, better run fast.
yeah, like I feel like you are supposed to get moving, but I think some people like maybe you, sometimes when you play games, you get so much into analytical details. Sometimes I like to run with what the game's making me do, so I experience those moments the way they're supposed to.
Hmm.
And I think that's one of those moments that's cool like that.
I can't wait to walk around in it.
You're like, no, let me do what I want to do. I don't care about what you want.
Freedom of choice for the player at all times, please.
I'm for cinematic moments.
So we make it to the apartments now, and this is where the game really starts showing the bread and butter of everything. It's very
bread and butter
interconnected. Lots of shortcuts.
Mm-hmm.
They really brought this place alive because the original apartments, I wasn't like they were fine, but it was pretty boring by the numbers. This felt like a lot of layers.
Yeah, I liked again, level design is great in this game in the way it's a maze. But I also like that even though a lot like most of the apartments have a similar layout, they brought little details to every single thing to make you feel like somebody different was living in each apartment. So it wasn't like you were necessarily even go it almost felt like a hotel or motel like the old one where it's like open door, same room, open door, same room. It's like it felt like somebody was in this room, or this room's like weird and bashed up, this room's weird and like water damaged, and this room looks really nice. Like it made it more dynamic.
Mm-hmm. uh, I like kind of the overall kind of meaning to the apartments too, because it's one of those things I always wondered, like why the apartments, why is this relevant to James? And it's like, was he staying there
Mm-hmm.
instead of with his wife at the hotel when she was sick, or at the hospital with her while she was sick?
Mm-hmm.
And he was just, nah, I'm gonna go hang out here.
Yeah, because James is selfish.
And it was closer to like the downtown areas and whatnot, with
Mm-hmm.
strip clubs and everything else, because it's just on the other side of the apartments.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those things that I never really thought about until playing this game, and I was just like, oh wow. There's a room where when you get the gun, James is dead in the chair watching TV, and it's one of those situations of like, it makes you wonder, did he shoot himself, or what exactly
Mm-hmm.
happened there, or was he planning to shoot himself, and that's why there was a gun, and that's actually his gun that he bought.
Or was that his way of like dissociating from the entire situation?
And these are the questions, and that's why it gets really good.
Yeah.
Because you're just like,
I love things that don't have an answer, though. Like, I don't want a definitive answer. I don't want a creator to come out
100%.
and
I don't
say,
want.
this is what we meant.
Yeah, I don't.
Let us think about it. Let us talk about it.
That's what I love about Miyazaki and Dark Souls is.
Oh yeah, there is no answer.
Yeah, there's no answer. It's just fill in those blanks for yourself and
Yeah,
create
find
your
them.
own story, because people take this stuff seriously, and they argue about it to no end. It's pretty crazy online sometimes.
Well, the point of art is to talk.
Yeah, to talk.
Yeah.
And not to hate one another.
Right. There's not supposed to be a definitive answer to art. There is not supposed to be a this painting means this song means that.
Why are you so against civil war in all aspects of life?
Excuse me, because I think there's peaceful answers.
I agree. It's just
I think
silliness.
that's the whole point of art, and if people don't realize that this is art or a video game is art, you're wrong. Storytelling is an art, and it should be more left of it. That's why, like, I love Quentin Tarantino and stuff. I like creators who say, no, I'm not going to define it. I'm not going to answer your questions, and I'm going to leave things open ended. And I want you to use your brain. I want you to use your brain and think.
A MacGuffin doesn't matter. Brilliant.
Yeah.
We also meet our friend Eddie here in the apartments, and he is vigorously throwing up in a toilet.
Oh, it's my least favorite part both times, because I'm one of those people who, if I hear people throw up, I start to get real nauseous.
And classic, it's way more egregious than it is here now. But Eddie is much more pathetic in this scenario.
Yeah.
He's just kind of whining and crying, where in the original he's kind of like, it wasn't me, and he's kind of grinning while he's saying it, wink wink at the camera. This performance overall is, I feel, much better. It's way better than anything else. But James also doesn't want to tag along with him. He doesn't want to be his friend and help him get out of Silent Hill.
And James feels and sounds softer in this.
Very.
Like when he's yelling at people, he's like, oh, well, I'm a nice guy. Let me help you. Like I'm just here to be nice and help, and I just want everybody to help me. And like, aren't I so nice?
Right.
I'm gonna point that out a lot because I feel like that's just like this mask that he wears.
Mm-hmm. And then I can't remember if it's the Maria scene next or the Pyramid Head scene. Or not Maria, Angela. We'll do the Angela scene where she's staring into the mirror and uh, pulls the knife on him.
Yeah, I mean that's done really well.
Yeah. Um, versus the original where she just kind of screams briefly and then puts the knife down and awkwardly leaves the room. I just, to me, this is like probably the most iconic scene I can remember from the
Mm-hmm.
original. And I think it's even on the cover is Angela laying on the ground. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people think it's James's face on the
I
cover.
think is this a Mandela effect because
No,
I
it's
think it's
it's
James's
it's
face
it's
too.
not. It's Angela.
That's
She's
why I'm asking if it's a Mandela
it's
effect.
a
Like
it's a
we all remember it
it's a
one way.
green case and it's Angela's
It's a
face.
green case, and I wonder if.
It's 100% Angela.
Okay, well keep going, and I'll look it up.
Um, but just the aggressive nature of Angela to show you that she's not some weak.
Oh,
Yeah, see,
I don't know if that's Angela.
it's 100%
You
Angela.
think it's Angela?
Yeah, 10 out of 10
Not
Angela.
Mary or anything, but yeah.
I mean, it could be James. It's pretty big schnoz, right?
Yeah, but it's got some pretty eyes.
I
But then
know.
again, it could be James.
Who knows?
It might be James.
It might be. Maybe I'm remembering it wrong.
Well, you just looked at it, but I don't know.
It's weird, right?
It's hard to make out who that is.
Is it all of them? Dun dun dun.
Well, this is
Uh
like the PS5 version.
oh, then it's Angela, 100%.
But James is in the knife in this, which is cool.
Yes. I
Um,
think that's what the original was trying to
oh, I
convey.
think that's a fan made one. So I think maybe it could be Angela. I think you could be right.
Um, how do you feel about the Pyramid Head scene in this when you first meet the big guy?
I think it's just like the same as the original, and I think people interpret it all the time. Everybody always assumes that he is doing the deeds with the mannequin, but they never actually show that.
No, I would argue that he's trying to shove them down the garbage disposal.
Or he is doing stuff like that, but it's up to your own interpretation. He could be fixing them, he could be beating them, he could be assaulting them.
Yeah, I do like that he does the twitchy Jacob's
Oh yeah.
ladder Silent Hill thing that we all expect Silent Hill monsters to do, where he kind of twitches out.
I like this the framing of James a lot. Um I like that he doesn't just automatically shoot at them, right? He
No,
does in the
he
original.
waits for a second and then he starts shooting.
Mm-hmm.
But I love that you hear the bullets like really ricochet off
Mm-hmm.
of that helmet. So it's like, ooh, he's invincible, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
No, I thought it was fine. I don't. I mean, that's probably I think's the most iconic scene, and I don't think they did anything wrong. I think people will say it's wrong because they misremember it as
mm-hmm.
something more
I agree.
sexual than it is actually shown.
Yeah, I don't think.
But you can interpret
watching,
it as that.
just watching the scene recently, it doesn't look sexual. It looks like he's trying to jam. It looks like one is attacking the other while he's trying to jam it down the sink. It's a really
It almost feels like he's
peculiar
building.
scene.
I always saw it as he was like building them, like putting it together himself.
Mm,
So everybody interprets it differently,
exactly.
and they never definitively show you what he's doing. So
Yeah.
I think they keep that feeling to it,
Mm-hmm.
where you really don't know what he's doing over there.
But it's just as effective.
Yeah,
I would say beat for beat, it's like really on point at this point.
I don't understand the love of Pyramid Head besides the fact that he's hot. Um, he's not scary.
I would argue that he's much scarier in this game.
Well, yeah, but then I think about the first one and how you just run in a small room back and forth and you don't have to do anything, and I'm like, How did he ever become popular?
I thought that was the silliest thing
It is.
ever.
It is. It's silly all the time with him in the original.
I mean, if
And
he
I'm
hits
like,
you, it does a lot of damage, but other than that, it's
but that's what I'm saying. How did everybody fall in love with Pyramid Head when, like,
it's a
he
cool
barely
design.
did it? Well, it's a cool design. Like I said, he's hot, but
Well, I'm not saying he's hot. I'm saying it's a cool design.
that's why he's hot. But like,
No, he's hot because he has Kate. Damn it.
well, he doesn't in this. He does not look like his Dead by Daylight counterpart that is all booty. Um, but in general, I don't think Pyramid Head's the most um I don't know, most interesting enemy in the game. I think he gets a lot of
It's the symbolism.
yeah.
It's the fact that he's a butcher.
Yeah, I get the symbolism. I mean, it doesn't have to be spelled out. I just don't think he's as great as everybody thinks he is.
The heavy knife is the burden in which James carries, just like the giant helmet
He's just
is the burden
really
that James
cool
carries.
design.
He's a really cool design.
And we can all make excuses on why this is that. It's just because he looks cool, man.
Yeah, he does look cool.
So
10 out of 10, best enemy.
Just trying to make me mad.
I'm actually one of the few that I prefer other things outside of Pyramid Head too. But
yeah,
that'll be for discussion for other Silent Hill projects, hopefully.
Yeah.
Doublehead Baby for the win.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Now I'm not gonna sleep tonight. Thank you.
Sorry.
Couldn't look into a closet for the last 15 years since that. Why has it been? Ugh.
It's been a thing for sure. After this,
Go
on. The Pyramid Head boss fight.
Oh, yeah, it was fine. It was better than the original.
Yeah, I felt it sufficed for what it was trying to do.
Well, yeah, it's an arena fight. It's fine.
Not super engaging.
They're all arena fights.
Although we were lucky enough that we ended up shooting Pyramid Head until we were completely out of ammo, so it left us wondering.
It looked like that was our only choice.
You were supposed to use all your ammo to show you he was invincible. So that really
they should have done that.
That was very impactful for us because we were like hyped afterward, like, oh my god, like they made us use everything. Like, what's gonna happen?
Just saying,
how are we supposed to do this?
Game developers, think about that.
Back out into the streets, we're gonna make our way to meeting Laura, who is going to run away from us, and we're gonna chase after her. We're gonna find Maria. Our first interaction with her, and we've already talked about she's more deceptive.
Yeah, I think the docs are boring. At least let me pick something up.
You made fun of some light bulbs.
Oh my god, those light bulbs were doing.
They were doing some
crazy
janky
stuff. Those are the problems I have. Just some areas that were boring to walk through, and those are the things I would cut down personally or add more content to.
Yeah, I believe there's more content. The problem was we didn't find it.
Well, I know, but I mean more real content, more things for me to actually do, not just walk around, look at
finding
statue, look around, look at
like the little motel, finding her dress and that kind of stuff.
Well, that kind of stuff's fine. No, I mean I want to do something. I don't just want to feel like I'm in a museum. Where I'm like, oh, look at this statue. Oh, look at this letter. Oh, look at this.
I know, you're repeating yourself on that. That's why I was saying going to the motel and actually finding the dress and doing some activities
I'm saying
there.
No. I wish there was more than that. Like puzzles or combat or something.
There's combat. It was just not a lot of combat.
It wasn't effective, is what I'm trying to say. These are the areas where the level design really goes back to what that original Silent Hill 2 feels like, where it's just too much open space with not enough to do in it.
That's good criticism.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I want to spend time actually engaging in the environments.
So, how do you feel about the Eddie ice cream scene at the movies versus the Eddie pizza scene from
Made
the original?
Him seem so much more pathetic. That's for sure.
Made him look gross.
Well, yeah, I was grossed out personally. You know how I am. I don't even like if you want to put cereal in a cup, I go crazy. Like,
It's my favorite pastime.
oh, like so just the unhinged mindset that would come from just eating ice cream with your hands. Like it just makes him feel like grosser. It makes him feel more pathetic, and it's more like okay, this there's something wrong with this guy because
Mm-hmm.
pizza, like yeah, everybody eats pizza, man.
Yeah. But while they're monsters outside,
Well, you gotta like
I know.
carbo load to go.
Carbo.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, to me, it was always one of the weirdest parts about the original was that pizza thing. I prefer this and the subtleness of James kind of going, oh, it's good to see you haven't lost your appetite.
It almost feels shitty when he says it, right?
Right?
Feels a little underhanded,
like
oh yeah,
you're like you're
like,
kind of thinking, Eddie, you might need to kill this guy, man. Like that was some underhanded shit.
yeah, he's definitely insulting you, and like the fact that that is how Eddie hears things, like, and it makes us feel that way, because if you are thinking of it from Eddie's perception, it does sound like he's insulting you. But if you think of it from like a nicer James perception, you're like, oh man, I'm glad you're doing okay.
Right.
Like,
You could have just said that instead of, oh, at least you got your appetite back.
yeah, so it
Yeah.
is a little underhanded.
Yeah.
But, you know, like the pizza doesn't do as much because I like pizza enough that I would ask the Nightmare Monsters to deliver my pizza. Okay? Like bring me pizza.
Okay. Not the mannequins, though. That's too much silliness.
Oh, with their like feet in the air, just like trying to
giggling while they're hiding.
I kind of want this now. Can we put the nurses in like pizza delivery outfits instead?
I guess so.
I want a mod for that.
Yeah, somebody make that mod. The hospital and the basement here was pretty interesting with how it almost felt like they were spawning enemies in at a rapid rate, or like I don't know if there's just extra enemies down there that we weren't seeing because the radio's not going off because there's mannequins, and if they're still, it doesn't go off. It was just a really tense kind of area.
I actually like the hospital for those little details that we've talked about a few times, but I like looking at the pictures even and seeing like the nurse classes and stuff when you first get in there. You know, like those of us who have played know a little bit about it, and they just catered to that when you first get in there,
especially with the erased faces.
It was such a cool little nod to us.
You know, and I didn't get a chance because I was going to look back at that patience thing because you were really interested in the patient thing. Well, there's three patients, right? Well, there's three characters.
Yeah.
The rule of threes is very much here. So I was gonna see if there was like a connection between those patients and how they were acting versus the way that these characters were acting in this game.
If I want to look up if there is more lore that people have uncovered just about these patients, because I wanted to try to put it all together and just get a little profile and get to know them, because I like that kind of stuff. I like you don't have to put this puzzle together, but you can.
Yeah. Or like if it is a nod to like maybe a character that was in a pre-existing Silent Hill that maybe you're not thinking about. And that'll be fun to actually dive into later this evening or tomorrow, depending on what I feel like doing. Because that was one of those things I was going to look up and I didn't get a chance to.
It was cool. There was so much I liked about the hospital. Again, I like especially the juxtaposition between the regular hospital and Nightmare Hospital. Because when we're in the regular hospital, I'm like, this isn't that bad. This is kind of cool. I think this looks neat. Like it, there was the cool puzzles like with the X-rays and stuff like that that were just fun. Yeah. I don't know. It was just a really interesting place. And then the Nightmare Hospital was like, woof.
Yeah, very gross, very green and red. Like it's just like looked like an infection was everywhere.
And it was deadly.
And we got choke slammed into Nightmare Hospital.
That was a cool transition.
Off the roof, man. That was a really cool transition.
I did because it actually freaked me out because I didn't know it was coming.
fun fact, you get one of the endings if you go back and you check on Maria.
Oh,
Yeah, are you paying enough attention to Maria? You
interesting.
want the Maria ending, you better be checking on her.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's a cool little
Oh,
detail.
Maria though.
Just kind of like
Like
the finding the dress in the motel, you know?
I thought
Uh,
that was like super fun.
I love that.
Mhm.
That's a nice touch, especially to add to. That's how you get your ending. Is look at this dress.
Uh-huh.
Um, then you have the Flesh Lips boss fight. It's the
Oof.
ceiling
Yeah,
monster.
that looks so creepy.
I
I
loved
loved it.
it. The boss fights in this, bar none.
They're good. They're a good mix up.
I did watch a video of somebody talking about how they lose their mystique, and I'm like, are
What
you
mystique?
fucking kidding
Okay,
me?
okay.
Are you kidding me? I could have thrown my TV out the
Oh, I'm
window
sure.
because I was like, this is just such a what do I want to put it like contrarian for the sake of being the contrarian.
Oh yeah.
That's all that argument is, and it's silliness. Like the symbolism of the flesh lips is
Isn't intact. It's intact.
it's intact. You
Like
don't need multiple flesh lips. You don't need.
it actually doesn't make as much sense to have
Yeah,
multiple.
it doesn't make as much sense to have
It's
multiple.
effective. It's interesting and fun. Remember that the original boss fights aren't these like crazy dynamic interesting
They're
things.
bad.
Yeah, they're kind of
They're
stupid.
awful.
They're kind of like, oh, this is what we're doing now.
Right.
Where this was like, oh, this is what we're doing now.
Now, the end of the hospital has probably the only thing I'm going to say the original game does better. The chase sequence with Maria, James, and Pyramid Head.
Oh yeah, because I didn't even remember that, but I think chase sequences are difficult to pull off well, no matter
Yes.
what.
And the only reason why it worked in the original is because the camera angle gave you that perfect angle of, oh, he's here now,
Yeah, I don't know what's behind me.
and he's behind us, and you keep running blindly forward. And that's when static cameras go well. I feel like if they would have done that here and maybe gave you tank controls to make it a little janky to play, that would have made the scene set off a little bit harder than it did. Because other than that, it felt like a nothing sequence.
I can't think of a time that a chase sequence is done super well. I think of like Evil Within. I think of the Resident Evils. They started adding, active time events and stuff to try to get chase sequences to be better. But I mean, Crash Bandicoot's probably done it the best.
Uh,
It's the only time I think it's been really effective to me.
I would argue Mr. X. That's a good chase sequence.
But that's not
Different
a chase
kind.
sequence. That's like a hunter.
Yeah.
That's somebody hunting you. Because
Yeah.
then you would argue it's nemesis, but it's not a chase sequence. A chase sequence is when you're going down a hall and it's a static like way you have to go, and it's just something's chasing you.
So you prefer the polar bear running down the
No, the boulder
the
coming at
boulder.
you,
That too.
where you gotta like
The
actually
Indiana
platform
Jones.
towards yourself.
The-
That's unique and interesting. Otherwise, you're not doing anything. Even with active time events, it's more interesting because you have to dodge and move, and when things are in your way. But by the time you've done it the third or fourth time, you're just fucking annoyed.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna give you that. That's pretty good.
Right. I mean, just think about Resident Evil 6, and then you'll know all you need to know about these sequences that don't work well.
Right. From here we go to the streets again, but now it's nighttime, and I felt like this could have been shortened a little bit. It was a pretty long sequence. It wasn't bad. It wasn't great. There was nothing particularly special about it. It was just kind of like a combat zone area. You're just making your way through the streets, fighting the nightmares and that exist in Silent Hill.
I feel like that could be a cutscene, so we know you got from one place to the other.
Yeah, or like you got to like a specific location that was sooner, and then it just kind of finished itself.
Because we already spent so much more time than usual in the town, right? So that was your expansion of the town. Take out the later when
Yeah,
we've already been
because
through it.
this is one of those situations where you're not even really exploring because you're just going down
Right.
a path.
Right.
So it's kind of, and we almost missed that wrench. Remember that? Oh, that would have been.
We still never found the carjack, right?
No, we never found the carjack. So who knows what happened with that? I'm still looking for that carjack to this day. Uh,
It's in my dreams.
yeah. Actually, I forgot to go back and get it for my other playthrough, which is stupid of me. But I was like, don't forget the carjack, and I did it again.
You'll never know.
The next area is the Historical Society, and we've already discussed this is where that bug room is, and that's terrible.
I hate that.
And we go from that right into the Abstract Daddy, which is Angela's kind of nightmare creature.
So before that, I do want to mention that I do think it's nice they try to relate the Silent Hill to other Silent Hills through like the park and the historical society and stuff more than the original did. Just that you get some little tidbits about the cult and stuff. I think that that's nice, but otherwise nothing more than that.
Yeah, I would like to see. I was hoping they would put more cult stuff in this because I think that the occult is what makes Silent Hill Silent Hill.
It is.
And this story is a great story, but
It
why is it happening here
Yeah.
in specific?
What makes this a Silent Hill game? Well, nothing really except for that it's in Silent Hill.
That's
So it was nice to sort of at least see some of the history that is explained in other games. And I do like the whole, and maybe I don't think I'm ahead of myself because I think you learn it in these previous areas about the story of the maiden and all that, and the boat and the lights.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was a nice metaphorical story.
Right. No, I agree. That kind of stuff is really really good.
But it could be done in a quicker, smaller area or peppered through other areas.
Yes, I agree with that statement too.
So Abstract Daddy.
Abstract Daddy.
Everybody's favorite.
Yeah, everybody's favorite, not yours.
It's
really
so
disturbing. It's
uncomfortable.
really uncomfortable.
It's really uncomfortable. I'm sorry. It's interesting. It's effective. It's
very effective.
Uncomfortable.
Fun note: did you notice that we were only safe when we ran into the closet?
Oh, I did not notice that.
That was a little detail that I was like, wow, that's messed up. And
oh, that whole section's messed up.
It's very messed up. I feel really bad for Angela.
Well, that's after the prison, in between the labyrinth and the prison, that you actually go through that house.
Oh yeah, it is after the prison.
Yeah.
Oh, we didn't talk about the prison. Let's talk about the
well,
prison.
it's okay. We talked about the prison a lot. It's awesome. There's no negatives. It's wonderful. 10 out of 10. Best game. Yeah. Just kidding. Best part, at least.
Yeah, I mean, there really isn't much more to say about the prison other than it's been expanded on and it was done very beautifully.
Yeah, I thought, just like I said, the puzzles opening each door and then having a different area was great.
Oh, I see what I did there. I messed up my note. Okay, that's fine. I put it before something. I was like, oh, maybe it's between that. Okay, no, I'm misremembering things too.
Hey, guess what? You remembered all this, and I said I wouldn't, and then I did.
My brain is sore from all the stuff that I've been looking at.
I came in clutch for this 1% moment that I needed to.
Thank you so much. High five.
Prison, yeah, definitely dynamic, interesting. I'm not really sure why the prison's relevant. Now that we talk about what the relevancy of like the apartments was, I guess I never really thought story wise.
I think it's relevant to the idea of being imprisoned in your own mind.
Is that where we fight Eddie too?
No.
No, that's later. So yeah, maybe it is like the guilt of like this is where I should be.
Exactly. Like all these characters should be in prison.
Yeah.
Save Laura and Maria, but the three main characters, Angela, Eddie, and James, should all be in prison, and they're kind of in a prison in the sense of their own mind. From their guilt and everything.
I think a lot of people could find it kind of boring because it's just cells and you're walking up and down and it can be dark and dingy.
It's terrifying
But I love that, and that's when you meet those the aberrant sort of versions of the mannequins, and it's a perfect time because it's dark and it's creepy, and they crawl over the
Yeah,
cells and under the cells.
it's pretty awful. It's one of the scariest sections of any game I've ever played, I think.
I love it.
Yeah, it's very
I was
well
having a
done.
great time.
Very maze-like, very labyrinthy, much more so than the
The
labyrinth,
actual
which
labyrinth, it's
is
annoying.
after the abstract Eddie, which we already talked about.
Yeah, so but you do go through before the labyrinth. You were talking about Abstract Daddy and that fight, but more so you go through like what seems like it's almost like Angela's home.
Yes.
And that part was interesting. It was more of a cinematic part than it was like anything, but it did feel kind of like it had that urgency, like I was talking about earlier, where I like where the wind's blowing you and you have that urgency sometimes. I don't want the whole game to be that, but it's okay to have those moments.
Right.
And I think it broke it up from what we were used to already.
Right. And we actually talking about the labyrinth today, and I had an epiphany with the labyrinth where it's like, oh well, this is kind of them all converging, like all their mental states are kind of converging into this one point, and every layer you kind of go through is a different person. So like the first one you go through, you're running from the Mandarin that's underneath the grate, that's trying to get you to do the quick puzzle sequences and escape. And that's kind of like Angela's section.
Yeah.
Then you have the my favorite section where you're actually running from Pyramid Head in the basement in his home, and that's James's kind of area. And then the last area is the shooty bang bang, almost like a horde mode, and that's like Eddie's area. And I hated this section of the game, but that gave me more appreciation. And I really felt like the first and third section were the weakest points of it.
I hated the section of the game. You can't make me like it. Come try. I just thought it was too much of the level design we maybe just like expected from Bloober Team. It was very simple, very obvious, very handholdy, less to interact with, less to be curious about. Very much just go from point A to point B. It's obvious where to go. It's linear. You get it done, and it's annoying the entire time.
It feels less.
And it glitched.
Yeah, feels less like a labyrinth.
Yeah, it was literally harder to get through the prison and the hospital. It was so confusing than it was to get through these damn labyrinths.
Yeah.
They call them.
Yeah.
Like you can't call something a labyrinth and then make it so easy to get through.
Get him, babe. Get him.
I'm just saying it was annoying, and then I do feel like I am a little.
Agree.
I do have some negative feelings because it glitched and we got stuck and we couldn't like continue that the feelings we were having through the game, so we had to stop for a second, and it was like, oh, do we have to start this over again?
And then I magically got it to work one day.
Yeah.
Right before they released the patch, it just worked, and I was like, I've had the game out all day. We have to record today.
Yeah. So besides that, it was all lazy level design in my opinion.
Yeah, it's pretty weak. This is easily like the worst section of the game.
And those mandarins, ooh,
although boy. It was the scariest section with the pyramid head.
Yeah, that was okay. I would say the second one I can handle.
Did you rewatch our video? We were freaked.
But if they would have just expanded on that instead or something, like that's where it was at.
100%. 100%.
Especially the third section was so annoying.
So stupid.
It was so stupid. I was just like, okay, I know what's next. Okay, I know what's next.
That's okay, because we get to go and meet your favorite character, Walter Sullivan's Grave.
That was cool. He is my favorite.
No, this is the game that introduced Walter Sullivan.
Yes.
In an original note.
That's why I think 4 needs to be remade next.
Please
we
remake
need to go
4.
We need to go 2, 4, 1, 3.
100%.
It's the only way to do it.
But we get to fight our friend Eddie, and probably
that's a great fight.
Probably the best boss fight that I've played in a long time.
The lead up to it, the entire moment is well acted and well framed. The boss fight's super interesting in that
he is talking crap to you.
Yeah. At first it seems a little easy because you can just hide behind things, but then when you get to like the second phase,
You can't see.
well, you can't see, and he destroys the hanging meat.
Yeah.
And so now you have
Well,
less
that's the
places
third
to hide.
section.
Oh, that's the third phase.
Yeah.
Well, it does a good job. It feels
And if
almost like a
he-
different game.
And if he shoots you, like you're almost dead. Like it's like, oh, don't let him shoot you again.
This gives me like Dead Rising kind of vibes in that way
Yeah,
of like a
but
cool
good.
boss arena
Yeah.
where it's like, oh, this is an interesting concept because they do have some of those.
And a fun little tidbit about this section too is the reticule doesn't snap in as tight.
Like he doesn't want to shoot Eddie.
Exactly.
I mean, I would.
That's
Oh.
awesome, right? Like the little
It is,
detail.
but Eddie's such a shit.
He is a shit.
I can't like him.
But he dies in tremendous fashion.
Yeah, it's really
it's
well done there
impactful.
too.
It's very impactful.
It's something that I'll say doesn't get talked about enough, but I feel like there's a lot of color play in the palettes of the game where, you know, you talk about that final if that final scene with Angela, she feels red this entire time to me. When you're going through the abstract daddy part, it feels more red, pink, maroon colors, almost bruised. And then when you look at Eddie, things are so very blue.
Mm-hmm.
Like things,
Cold.
he almost looks blue in a lot of things, but his eyes are that color. What he's wearing is that color. And when he's laying there on the ground and the steel is that color and the ice is there and the white and his eyes are like that, it's such a beautifully put together thing where James has more green and sickness to him in general, like his green coat, his yellowish hair.
That's a really great point.
Yeah, I love it. I love the art design of this game because I think a lot of it is purposeful.
Didn't even think about that. That's very insightful.
Laura has colors that go with Mary, with the pinks and the whites, and she always looks a little bit more clean. That goes with like the outfits and stuff that you find of Mary.
Mm-hmm.
And the pink matches the club and stuff with Maria. So
isn't there something about the red and something roses that James is supposed to bring, but they're bad luck?
It's something like that.
I wonder if that's supposed to be symbolic
I think
too.
White roses are no friendship or white roses,
but but it's something about mixing the two is bad luck or something, and that's kind of like the colors of Laura and Mary, or Maria. That's interesting. You know, those are those little details.
There's tons of that.
Like you just thinking about it now, and it's just like, wow, there's the little details, man.
There are, and that's what this game is made up of. So that scene for me with Eddie was the perfect end because it embodied the cold, it embodied the blue, it embodied him. Where, you know, that's why Angela's final scene is so perfect. It's the heat, it's the red.
Right. Then we row our boat
we
across the lake, and
that was an annoying part. Yeah, that could have been a cutscene, or like a 10-second, like you're rowing.
You are not getting lost from that spotlight. It is right there.
If you got lost and you didn't know where to go, you're an idiot, and you didn't read anything in the game.
Just do the game.
It's your fault if you didn't find it.
Just get us there. That was one of those things that I'm like, this, you could cut this a little short.
I mean, have some narration over it then if we're going to do it. Have something. Anything.
It was not my favorite. I get the themes, but it's...
We all got the idea once
could have been
read
implemented.
The files.
Could have been implemented better. I thought it was bad in the original too.
Yeah.
But then we're to the hotel. This is the special place.
This is beautiful, by the way.
It's a great sequence, and I think the hotel actually does exist somewhere that it's modeled after.
I want to go now. It's so pretty, like, especially after seeing all the nightmare areas and stuff. Like,
this place is actually very calming,
yeah.
Even for being still like a nightmare area. This scene with Laura really, like I said earlier, it's hard for me to watch. It's very sad, but I think this is where the standout moments of finding the Mandarin like face to face.
Yeah.
I thought
still annoying enemy.
I thought it was a great boss fight. When it died, though, the music didn't cut, and we were just beating this thing until the music did die. And we don't know if this is a glitch or not, but it was very symbolic to the ending of the game and
Yeah.
the representation of what the Mandarin is, which
It
is
felt
supposed to
so
be
weird.
kind of a representation of Mary.
Yeah.
Uh, and we just beat the hell out of it until it was dead. And they, to that actually got to me when we
Mm-hmm.
did that,
Mm-hmm.
when I did that. But I was like, I didn't feel good about it at all. I didn't feel
Yeah,
good about it.
because it made it awkward for us.
And I did enjoy the giving up all your items and going
Oh,
to the
it's
basement.
always so nerve-wracking to give up your items.
I know.
That's where I got stuck in Fatal Frame 3 is when you have to play the character where you don't have the camera and you have to get around. It's always so scary when you're defenseless.
Yes.
And then they made you go all the way back to the locker through the freaking hotel.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I was so like, this sucks.
Yeah.
You're kidding me.
I thought this was great stuff.
I felt like it was a little long, and I don't know if that is just because I knew we were at the end and I desperately wanted to see it.
I think it's the anticipation, because to me the hotel felt like it was over in a flash.
Really?
But what didn't feel like it was over in a flash was when we got, like, you get to the room, you watch the video, you see that James kills Mary to end her suffering, or his suffering, depending on how you look at it. And then it turns into what we're assuming is going to be Nightmare Hotel, and we're like, oh no, don't let it be Nightmare Hotel. Yeah. But instead, it's just a rundown hotel. You're going through it, but nothing's really happening. And then we fight the Double Pyramid Head.
Okay, but are we missing the point where all the enemies are just...
This is after.
Oh, okay, because that is the most effective thing this game has done to me.
Yes.
Double Pyramid Head's still stupid to me.
I don't know why there's two.
Like, is it like Pyramid Head's persona is now more powerful than James himself? Like, and he needs to overcome that?
I don't...
I think it's just like, all right, well, they fought Pyramid Head
also,
twice. How do we make it harder?
Two Pyramid Heads. And they have spears instead of swords this time.
Which is still much less effective.
To me, I don't understand it. I'm going to have to do some deep diving on all that, because I still don't understand any of that.
It didn't do much for me like it didn't before.
But after that, yeah, the enemies cower. They're afraid of us.
It actually breaks my heart.
We're the monster.
It's so sad because, like, they're so pathetic now, where they were so vibrant through the whole game. They're so aggressive, and they giggle and they have like noises and stuff, and now they're just like
like I felt awful. Like, the game made me feel awful, like, for everything that I had done up until this point.
Yeah. It was incredibly effective to me.
And into the coup de grace. We finally find Mary.
Oh, yeah.
I'm quoting the air.
That lady.
And Maria does her best to sell us on the fact that she is Mary.
She could be Mary for us if we want her to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's willing to play that part.
I love how they handled this scene. In the original, it's... he's like, Mary? And she's like, wrong again. Like, and it's it's
in
silly.
This one, she's like, yeah.
She hugs him and holds him and everything. And then he's like, this has to stop. And he's like, so what if I'm not her?
Right.
Like it's like, oh man. Like, it seems like you're cheating on your wife with this girl, and now she's like, no, I'm gonna be your wife. And you're like, no, I have to stop this. I'm doing the wrong thing. She's like, well, I won't let you.
Yeah.
It's it's a whole other mess of problems, man.
Which, who knows, like, some of those details that happen. Did somebody go to Mary or threaten to go to Mary? Okay, well, I'll just tell your wife then.
Well, that's part of what I think of in the entire story is, like, what's so cool about this boss fight is you see that this is representative of the Mandarin, the flesh lips, the lying figure. Like, this is all coming to a head.
Mm-hmm.
And that all these enemies are kind of loosely based off of sexuality and his id, and uh, watching it lay there on the ground and like you have to deliver the final blow, and it's she's sitting there going James and just
Oh,
kind of whining and crying to
it's
you.
crazy. You're like,
It's
oh.
it's upsetting. It's harsh stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then we finish Maria and we see uh, with our ending a sick Mary, and she looks awful.
Yeah,
And
I mean, really bad in this.
James is apologizing, saying that he hated her and that's why he did it, and she forgives him.
Yeah, we got the ultimate ending, right?
Yeah,
Like
the leave Silent Hill,
yeah,
and that's more of a no. You just go to the graveyard and then you lay to rest. Your spirit
right.
passes.
And the fact that you're there with Laura, that also is what makes me think that she's a bit of a guardian angel character, just because she's like holding your hand out of it
Mm-hmm.
in that ending.
Yeah.
Spoilers, like we
Yeah.
haven't said it, but that is the ending we got, and
Yeah. It's just overall very impactful. Watching Laura and figuring out that like, oh, she's this dead little girl that was sick at the same hospital that Mary was at, uh, and Mary saying, "Oh, we'll one day we'll have a family together." And
mm-hmm.
James, he's kind of mean and whatnot, but he's not that bad. And then it's just like, oh, well, how mean was James? And was he cheating on her? And the flashlight pointing at you when you see it, was that like Mary catching you in the act? Like it raises all these questions.
But it never gives you a definitive answer, which is how it should be.
And it's exactly
Like,
how it should
how
be.
far did James go? How much did he do? Like, was it emotional? Like, did he just go to strip clubs to get away? Did he
Mm-hmm.
have people he brought to the motel? Because that's why you go there.
Right.
Like, did he have something going on in the apartment? Like, just how much, how far did it go? Was it fantasies? Was it all just in his head and he felt so guilty about thinking about other people that this manifested?
Yeah. Because it's even the nurses are sexualized,
Mm-hmm.
the mannequins are just the bottom parts of the mannequin, uh, doubled up on, and then the lying figures that resemble Mary being sick and kind of throwing up, you know?
I wonder with some of those kind of designs if like some of it is getting towards, did James only see Mary as sex? Because like he's
As a
upset when he can't be physical with her.
Yeah.
Like what is he feeling guilty that like he no longer feels the same way when he can't be physical?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, I was just like I just like her body, because those kind of thoughts can go on too.
Right. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think it's that. I think James loved his wife. Maria is a manifestation of how he sees his wife, the perfect woman.
Or the
As
distractions,
yeah, um,
because I feel like she manifests the things he used to distract himself from Mary.
that's true, and that's what's cool, right?
Yeah, that we have
Is
different thoughts on that.
because from my point of view, it's just like no, the perfect woman is my wife, all dolled up. Like that's how I see you. Like I imagine you as that's you're my idea of the perfect woman, all pretty and everything, and like that's my everything.
No, well, that's really
Um,
sweet.
but the fact that you could see it as like no, you just see her as this sexualized manifestation of everything, and
Yeah, like because he goes to the strip club and stuff with her, and it's just like the amalgamation of all the women that he was attracted to, or like wishes Mary could have been in that moment, where his distractions, because she's trying to stop you too.
mm-hmm.
She's like, no, let's take a break. Let's not
Mm-hmm.
finish this. Oh, but I need to sit
That's a
here.
really good point. That's a
Yeah.
really good point. That's a
So
damn good point.
like she's
Some would
trying to
say,
hold you back
right?
from finding that peace,
Where Laura's kind of like
guiding you to the right place.
guiding you, but kind of being a bit of a foil along the way. It's kind of
Well,
Laura's
she
such a
doesn't
weird.
want you to follow her.
Well, she doesn't want you to have Mary because she
Right.
she thinks you don't deserve Mary, so she wants you to earn it.
Right. and like so you have to come,
Yeah.
you have to fight all these things off to like prove to Laura you're not bad.
Oh, we did forget to talk about the ascending staircase and
Oh yes.
uh with Angela, her fate and her burning everywhere. It's like that
And
for her
how
all
the
the time.
fire desynced our audio, it was so hardcore.
Oh, it
It
was. It
just
destroyed it.
it destroyed our game
Destroyed it.
for the next
Everything,
forever.
yeah, everything else was fine. The fire,
The
ooh,
minute that happened, everything,
uppercutted our
yeah,
recording
yeah,
software, man.
it was too much.
But a fun note on rewatching that is the abstract daddy's pinned to the wall with its penis cut off.
I think it's fitting.
Yeah.
You know, I, which is weird because I say I can't forgive Eddie. I think he's a bad person. I really don't think Angela
Angela's.
did anything wrong. Like I don't think she deserves to be there at all.
Well, she might have killed her brother on accident.
I mean that's true, but I mean that would be her only true sin to me is taking people with that didn't deserve it.
Yes.
Um
Well, she watched. She wanted the whole world to burn for what happened to her.
yeah. I mean just it's iconic in the original too, just this is how it
It's
always
a
looks for me.
it's a beautiful scene. It's a depressing scene. Um,
She's just like, yeah, this is what it's like here.
Angela's the representation of James doing it for the right reason,
Mhm.
which is you feel the sympathy and empatheticness of it, and
Eddie's
Eddie's
the selfish version
the
of James
selfish version,
who just wanted to get out of it.
or it's just like I'll just who cares. That's why there's the Maria ending.
Well, I mean, but I think the selfish version of James is more deep than who cares. I, this is a burden to me.
100%.
This,
Yeah.
that I need to get out of this because I have other things that I want to do with my life.
Oh yeah.
And I don't want to look at her sick body anymore.
Yeah, because even in the Maria ending, it's interesting that you say that because when Maria and James walks back to his car, she coughs and he's like, "You better figure out that cough thing." Like, kind of.
No shit.
Yeah,
That's really shitty.
it's really shitty, right?
That's a really shitty ending.
But when you watch all the endings, like, it's almost like,
Which I didn't do.
yeah, I watched all the endings just to kind of check everything. But they really only just kind of add a little bit more into what happened,
Mm-hmm.
except for like the Maria ending specifically, Maria. Um, and of course the weird endings are the weird endings, but uh, it's all implied that James killed him, uh, com- took his own life.
Yes.
Yeah, I almost said the
Close.
thing that I'm not supposed to say.
I was close. We'll
Yeah,
see how that goes.
took his own life.
Even then, that might
He
be.
drove his car into the water with his dead wife in the back seat, and that's how it ended for him.
Yeah.
I think Eddie shot himself. That's why he's constantly pointing the gun at his head. It's a reference to the idea that he took his own life that way, and Angela burnt everything around her
Mm-hmm.
and just lay there in the fire.
Which is a real shit way to go.
It is, but I mean that's my take on it. I could be
I
wrong,
mean,
but
it, again, that's what's fun about it. That's what's fun about leaving things open ended because we could all sit here and we could all bring up really cool moments that we interpret a certain way and it can make sense and we can open up thoughts for each other and that's what any good piece of art should do.
and that's what makes this story so special, and it's what makes this remake so special. Is not only did it tick all the boxes off of a classic, but it added upon that, and it did it in a
Mm-hmm.
respectful way that didn't jeopardize the content that it's based off of. This deserves to stand right alongside the
Mm-hmm.
original, and really playing either or, you're getting the same experience. It's just one's gonna look better and it's gonna be a little bit more engaging. But if you want a classic kind of static horror game, that exists too. It's just harder to access.
I would say it's along the lines of Resident Evil 4 remake to me, where they're both freaking great.
Mm-hmm.
Both games you can play separately and enjoy them in completely different ways,
Mm-hmm.
and it's completely true to its source material while just building on it. It doesn't take anything away. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't hurt anything. It keeps it in that little capsule of this is still what it is. It's just a different experience now.
Right. And that being said, fuck that old piece of shit. This one's way better. I'm gonna give it a 10 out of 10. I'm just
No,
kidding.
oh my god, I
I'm
did
just
not
kidding.
come to this prepared for a 10 out of 10. I'm gonna have a heart attack over here
That's all a joke.
because I would disagree with you.
I do enjoy this a lot, and I'm glad this exists, and I'm glad I don't have to dig out a PlayStation 2 to play Silent Hill 2 and enjoy the story. Um, so for me, this is a 9 out of 10 easy.
I'm flirting between an 8.5 and a 9. There's a lot of things that I think gameplay wise, just because they're better than the original, doesn't mean that they're the best out there right now. Um, I think character wise, voice acting wise, story wise, all those details, the enemies, like there's just too many good things to go too far down.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm leaning towards a 9. I think there are some stability issues. I'm mad that we had some game breaking type glitches.
Mm-hmm.
There's some areas that are just a slog or annoying, i.e., the labyrinth. The labyrinth has got me down a whole point no matter what. So I feel like I'm closer to an 8.5.
That's fine, and that's a very fair score.
Yes.
I would say that this is still a masterpiece.
Oh, yeah.
The original was a masterpiece. This is a masterpiece, and there's no disputing it. I think disputing it is just living your life with
Hate.
nostalgia goggles on and hoping that everybody just agrees with your statement. And
if you don't like it, and we're not sitting here saying you have to like it.
No, if you play the original game and that's good for you, you play the original game and that's good for you. But
there's a lot of great things I don't like, and there's a lot of shitty things that I love.
You're really, man, you're really missing out on some great boss fights.
But I'm just saying, if this game in general isn't your vibe, if you don't like either Silent Hill, that's a legitimate opinion. You know, you don't have to, but you have to look at it at least objectively then and go, there's not that much wrong with the game. You know, even if it's not my vibe.
You mean objectively?
Yes. I said objectively.
You said subjectively.
I said objectively. We'll play it.
It's recorded.
It is recorded. Yeah. This argument is brought to you by Do or Die.
It is. It's one of those things that we do.
Yes, objectively. Objectively, you have to look at it and go, you know, the combat's better. It's good. It's generally okay. Like the level design's great. The graphics still look good. Like I said, the voice acting's good. It's scary. Yeah. It's got good puzzles.
I would say that the extra 5 hours on top of the game length is warranted by just better level design, more added to levels that previously didn't have that much, more engaging combat, and a world that I couldn't stop exploring.
Yeah. So overall, like, this was awesome. I'm so glad we got to experience it.
Yes, it's a good thing that this game exists in a world where good games should exist. It's just, this takes me back to that famed, and tell me if you remember this or not. Remember when everybody was upset about what was better, Alien Isolation or Evil Within? And nobody.
Why would you compare those things? They're both great.
Nobody would stop and go, isn't it great that we have 2 good horror games that we could play right now?
Mm-hmm.
In a world full of not good horror games.
It's nice to see it come to light the way it has.
Yeah.
To bring the genre back a little bit to life. You know, Silent Hill 2 or Resident Evil 2 remake started kind of doing that itself. It really reinvigorated things.
It was a catalyst for the remake epidemic. But if you're making good remakes, I'm gonna keep buying them. So
Yeah.
and I'm glad I bought this.
Had fun. It was a good experience.
And I'm gonna keep playing. So I'm Chaos Augur.
I'm Vicar Amelia.
This is the Duo Die podcast. Uh, please like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you think of the Silent Hill 2 remake. I know we had some hot takes here that you probably don't fully agree with. We try to be as in-depth, as transparent, and as objective in a vacuum as we could and give you guys our point of view and our thought processes going into this game and be clear about our past history with Silent Hill so that you understand where we're coming from.
Yeah, we really just enjoy games, you know? We're people who just have a really good time with video games, and we want to talk about them in a realistic setting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what everybody really wants? They want that deep dive of our Rule of Rose thoughts.
Nobody's ever playing that game.
So
good luck.
Right.
Don't even bring it up in case somebody wants to make it a thing.
Yeah, I would love somebody to be like, "Will you please buy that $400 game?"
No, send it to me and I'll play it. I'm kidding.
It was a weird one though, right?
I was interested in it.
Yeah, it was.
I
really
rented
weird.
it a couple times.
We rented it quite a few times to get through it. It is weird. We were on a blimp or something. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good stuff. Man, I love old survival horror. There was such a charm for that PS2 era.
Absolutely.
And it had some of the best.
People had some visions.
Yeah, they did. All right. Well, we'll see you guys in our next podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us, and you all have a great spooky time playing Silent Hill 2 Remake, or just being a jerk and not playing it at all.
Only two options.
Yeah, those are your only two options. We'll see you later. Thank you.